Welcome to another episode of the Swords and Sports Podcast, one man journey to read 52 fantasy books in 52 weeks and create 52 podcasts documenting the experience. I'm your host, Mike Mose, the host of the number one fantasy podcast in the world according to nobody but myself. But if I keep saying it, I'll manifest it and make it happen. This week, I'm joined by the incredible Chase Bolling. And if you're curious how this interview goes, it's coming up right after the book details. Let me tell you something about Chase. He's lived a wild life, and his experience translated to such an interesting book. He's a fascinating person, and we had a ton of fun, so I can't wait for everybody to listen to that. It's coming up after the book details, which I already mentioned, but I think some people think that there's no interviews on this show, so I gotta keep repeating it for all you people. A quick self-promo, you can find this podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Those include Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, all the Amazon ones. So get on that, subscribe, like, rate. I've been just posting the YouTube stuff. That doesn't mean that you can't listen to just the audio, because that's how this thing started. And let me tell you, sometimes it's good to go back to the basics if you don't want to watch this video. Speaking of the video, I realized last week that I left my closet door open, and I'm looking now. My closet door is still open, so if you're wondering what I wear, besides what I wear on the podcast, I guess you can take a look there if you really give a shit. If you're curious about what's coming up in the upcoming weeks, one, you can listen to the end of the episode when I do Books on the Horizon. Two, you can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. The handles for both of those are @SwordsandSports, so give that a look. Let's get on to these book details. The book is The Road of Resistance. The author is Chase Bolling. The series is The Vanguard. This is book uno. There are 3 books right now, with the 4th one coming out. It was published in January 2020, the first version. The second version was published, I think, later on in the year. It is, depending on what Goodreads page you're on, between 350 to 600 pages. The version I read, which is the final version, is, I think, somewhere in the 350 range. The publisher is W. Clark Publishing, which he is an editor for. The books in the series are The Road of Resistance, The Road of Resistance Part 2, and The War We Make. As a quick heads up, this podcast contains spoilers for the following book, The Road of Resistance by Chase Bolling. If you haven't read it yet, consider this your warning. Without further ado, someone who I had an absolute fucking blast getting to know and talk with, Chase Bolling. All right, I'm back. It's another week of the Swords and Sports Podcast. I am beyond excited to be joined by the author of the Vanguard series. He's the managing editor of SFF for the Culture, and he's got a new book out, Rise of the N Block Rangers 2. It is author Chase Bolling. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So, one of the more fascinating things, and I don't think I've ever had an author have this in their author bio, is that you took etiquette classes growing up.
Yes, I did. My mom had a friend, right? She's from this project in my city called, it used to be called the Beardsley Terrace back in the day. Now it's called Trumbull Gardens. And there was this lady in Building 9 where that's what she did for many years until she retired. And so I always knew I was in trouble when my mother would bring me to her to be babysat, because I would spend the next 4 hours learning which fork was the correct fork and proper diction and proper etiquette and all of this. And I had to be like 6, 7 years old. But I remember that. And I can say it served me well. Not necessarily wasn't the best student, but I kind of am comfortable in certain environments, which I don't have a lot of experience in because of those days spent in Miss Gordon's apartment in Building 6 in Trumbull Gardens, learning etiquette in the middle of the hood. Like, it really was, when you think about it, it's a very incongruous thing because, like, we're in one of the worst projects in the city, but I'm sitting here taking etiquette classes. And so, when I was a kid, it never registered, but as an adult, I was like, man, that's crazy. Like, people wouldn't even believe me when I tell them.
Yeah, I mean, just anybody taking etiquette classes, I'm like, what the fuck do they teach you there?
Definitely, because there's certain things, and our culture's changed some. You know what I'm saying? Like, table spreads don't even look the same at restaurants no more like they used to. Like
Right.
all restaurants when we were kids used to be set up like a fancy restaurant. You know what I'm saying? Where you had all the extra forks and all the extra spoons. And so, if I'm at a dinner at the White House, I know which spoon to use for my soup and which fork to use for my salad.
Yeah, what side of the plate does the salad fork go on?
The salad fork goes on the left, and the way I remember that is because left has less letters, right? So all of the shorter ones, fork, 4 letters, left, 4 letters. It goes on the left hand side. So all of your knives go on the right.
Yo, who says this isn't an educational podcast? Do you think etiquette classes help you out with sports? Like, is there proper etiquette in football or lacrosse?
Um, this is what I'll say. Our coach was old school, right? So he didn't make us wear suits on game day, but we definitely had to speak and conduct ourselves like gentlemen. So having that ingrown, let me watch my tone, watch my mouth, watch what I say, saved me from quite a bit of up downs. Lacrosse, we were just godless savages on the lacrosse team. Interesting thing, I played Central lacrosse at Central Bridgeport Central High School the very first year we had a program. So it was me, a couple other kids, a bunch of my homies from Albania. Like we really didn't know what we were doing. We got smashed by everybody we played against, but it was fun. But yeah, we were just heathens. Like we did whatever we wanted during lacrosse.
Yeah, that must have been a fun ass team. Shout out to you. You're a pioneer.
Sure.
Yeah, you rapped under the moniker "the legendary thug poet." When you were releasing your book, did you ever? I've never seen an author do this, but it could have been interesting. Did you ever think about going by the legendary thug writer?
You know what? I thought about it. I had a discussion with my wife. I was like, yo, what do I publish this book under? Do I publish it under my real name or do I publish it under my stage name and kind of use the cross promotion type thing? You know what I'm saying? And so I ended up publishing under my government name just because I want all my checks to go to the right place. And I'm kind of glad because I got in an accident and that kind of put a kibosh on the rapping. So it would have been very hard explaining that, like, oh yeah, I used to be a rapper named the Thug Poet, and then I started writing under Thug Poet, but I don't rap no more though. So I'm just Thug Poet writer now, and I figured that'd be a little awkward. So I guess I definitely dodged the bullet.
I don't know. I think there's something to. I think more writers should try stage names.
I think that honestly is pretty dope. And a lot of our favorite authors and a lot of famous authors, the names they publish under are not their name, right? And then I remember, you know what it is every English teacher I've had since like fourth grade was like, Chase, you should write a book. I was like, nah, I ain't got time to write a book. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, who has time to write books? Right. And so now, I wanted my name to be there. So if any of, Miss Lily or Miss Cunningham or any of them pick it up, they know, like, hey, you guys had your part in this. And if not for all of the dope teachers and all of the great encouragement I've had, like, it would have never happened.
Shout out to Miss Lily and Miss Cunningham. I'm thinking also our mutual acquaintance Christian Cameron. He
Oh,
uses
yeah.
uh, he uses his name Miles and whatever the hell else he's doing. He's got like 6 names under his author thing.
He's like, I think about that, right? And it's funny because I didn't know how to address him when I first reached out to him on Instagram. Because like I came across his profile and I'm like a huge fan of Christian Cameron, man. Like, in all honesty, I want to say reading Killer of Men at the point in time in my life where I was at, like that book, that story kind of it was therapy. And so I wrote him and I was all nervous. And he's like just the coolest guy, man. Like he
Yeah, he's a
really is.
great dude. I just talked to
Like,
him last week.
yep. Like he's a great guy and he's a great author. Like, and it's rare because you usually expect people that are really dope writers kind of be jerks, and he wasn't. So I was very pleased.
Now, how do you get on writing fighting?
Um, I got on writing fighting because I want to say one day, right? I was listening to Christian and he was speaking in a panel with Sebastian Castell and a couple other authors, right? And he said something about the 6 chestnuts. I was like, what? I was like, what are these 6 chestnuts that you can use to defeat any opponent that doesn't know what the hell they're doing?
Sounds
And so
like
I
Kill
asked him
Bill.
about it. And he was like, just wait a minute. He's like, you'll see. And then soon, he's like, yo, do you Twitter? I was like, yeah, I Twitter occasionally, because Twitter can get you into trouble real fast. But yeah, and then that was that, like, he started doing the writing fighting videos and it was great. Like, I make my kids watch them with me when they come out. because I'm trying to get my son in the Hama and Hema. So I'm sort of doing my little indoctrination process, and Christian's like a big part of that. And he was one of the guys, real talk, where um his writing, right, his fight scenes spoiled me, right? So now if you don't know what you're doing with the sword and you're writing books about people using swords, chances are I'm gonna have a hard time reading your book, because Christian Cameron, Miles Cameron, has totally completely spoiled me, because the guy is like excellent. Like I
Yeah,
can't
he's
wait to
great.
see him. Like really, my dream matchup is I want to see him spar with Damon Stith of Street Forge
Okay.
Armories and the Historical African Martial Arts Association, because they always complain, oh, we're old guys, blah, blah, blah. Like, nah, bro. I need to see this happen. So
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to that.
how do we make this happen with me and you announcing it?
You know what? Honestly, I think that we should start like a social media campaign. We'll start on Twitter, right? We'll start a hashtag, and then we'll just, peer pressure them into doing so. And then maybe we'll get beat up ourselves, like we are, kind
Oh,
of
I
putting the
saw.
screws to two of the greatest swordsmen that I've personally ever spoken to. So like it'll be pretty interesting. But
I
that's
knew it.
definitely a thing.
No, man, I was watching some of your Instagram videos. Besides, putting some sick music to them, you got some moves.
Thank you. I tried defense in high school, right? And that lasted maybe about 2 weeks. The defensive backs coach started a fencing team. Right? I'm like, coach, I want to fence. He's like, yo,
What?
linemen can't fence. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you need to be quick. I was like, coach, I played defensive end. Like I hand fight in the trenches. My first step is fast. Like, what are you talking about? So he's like, all right. And then I go to fencing practice and I start fighting. I wasn't fencing, I was fighting.
Yeah, of
Right.
course.
And he pulls me aside after like the second week and he goes, Chase, I don't think this is for you. He goes, you will win every fight and lose every fencing match. So he put me on to Fiora de Liberie and Talhofer, right? He goes, this is more your speed. And Jewel de la Hop with a lot of the pole arm stuff. So he's like, yo, this is more your speed. And he walked me through some of the basics and all of that. And like, that's kind of what got me started on this road.
Do you think that guy is the only combo defense back coach slash fencing coach in the world?
You know what? Believe it or not, football coaches tend to be like the most diverse lot. Like, basketball coaches is pretty much what they do.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it.
Like, but shout out to Rabel, because like football coaches, like I want to say our head coach was the math teacher, which I've never heard of a football coach teaching math before in my life. Yeah, right. It's crazy. He was the math
What?
teacher and he was a bodybuilder. So it's like, football coaches tend to be kind of diverse like that. But shout to Rabel. And when you met Mr. Rabel, Coach Rabel, you would never know he was a football coach. Like he looked like he would be teaching like computer science or like chemistry one or something like that. Like he definitely didn't look like a football coach or a guy that played football. So it was a thing. Like, and he was dope at what he did. Like our DBs, like all of those guys went away to school and went on and did stuff. So it's pretty dope. It's excellent, actually.
Wow, what an interesting character. So you mentioned being a practitioner as well. What are your weapons of choice?
Um, I have a beastly reverse falchion.
Okay.
I named it Defiance. It weighs like 4.5 pounds. And I got obsessed with the design, and I had my best friend actually make it for me, because everybody said, oh, you can't defeat plate armor with a sword. I was like, word, watch this. And so now you really can't even call it a sword. It's a sword shaped object, but like I train with it every day. As a sidearm, it depends on what kind of mood I'm in. I've been working a lot of short spear and sword technique, sword and shield, and a sword and short axe, and I've taken a lot of inspiration from when you get in the Hama, there's a couple different schools, and the main ones would be like Zulu stick fighting, right?
Okay.
Tati, which comes from Egypt, and you get into the Torax sword and shield technique, right? Which comes from, like, I guess what we would call, like, Torax are basically what we call Moors, you know what I'm saying? So because I'm ambidextrous, the stick fighting kind of always appealed to me because I'm naturally left-handed, right? So it's like the stick fighting like was a thing, and it's like, yo, I like this. I like the way this feels having two weapons, and so I just started incorporating that with a little bit of arm strap shield. You know what I'm saying? So it gives me some flexibility with a lot of the Torag sword and shield footwork. You know what I'm saying? So it's keeping your shoulders square, keeping your defense quasi static. You know what I mean? And so just watching a lot of videos, stuff that I learned, like trying to recreate stuff from the fight books, because a lot of stuff is all experimental archaeology. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we have no idea what how the ancients really did it. And I mean, like, we gotta think about how tricky the ancestors were, right? So how do we know they didn't write down all the wrong crap so that the next guy picks it up and now they can't fight your guys? We don't know.
You mean there's no Instagram live we could check in on?
Exactly. And like, go ahead.
I'm thinking we could come up with our own video series, writing massacres, and then you just beat me up with these weapons, and then we'll send them to Christian and see if he'll post them.
Yeah, we can try it out and see what happens. Like, you know, I gotta say, like, really and truly, my wife is the reason why I have the entire arsenal I have. Right. So, fellas, if you're listening, right, if you be nice to your wife, maybe she'll buy you swords and stuff, because my wife brought my swords, she brought my axe, she got me shields, she got me a dope gambeson that I love. Like, so, you know, that's my tip. Like, if you're gonna be into this, your wife has to be on your side, because explaining why you spent all this money on weapons that nobody uses anymore is gonna be a hard sell.
Now, I almost think that you wrote that in the entire book just to rationalize your spending on this stuff.
You know, that there is a distinct possibility that that's exactly what I did, but, you know, we'll leave that for historians to debate at a later date.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. You know, you have a wife now, but back in the day, you had some questionable tweets over there. You were having some fun on Twitter back in the day. Let me
go ahead.
You asked the ladies at Twitter an important question back in 2020. If you and your man are going at it and boom, he busts out a sandwich in the middle of it, what are you doing? What was the response to that?
Still around.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna nick some of these questions based on that.
Yeah. Nah, my wife here, like, I had. Let me put it like this: I have the best wife ever. Right. And she knows that I'm low key. Like, I went through my car windshield in 2019. So I lost my filter in the accident. Like, I have none anymore. So, I mean, but yeah, if she busts out a sandwich, you know, while we're going at it, I might be a tad bit offended. I'm like, wait a minute here. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna choke if you're not careful. Like, what the hell? Like, come on now. You're supposed to be coming, not going.
What if it's a good ass sandwich? I mean, you could at least ask for half.
I mean, yeah, and if the sandwich is for me, then I don't know. That might be a lot of multitasking. My wife said she could have been setting it to the side for after, which might be something she does because she's incredibly organized. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a pre-made sandwich on the dresser one day.
You know what? That would be a compliment to you. That would say, this was that big a workout that I need to recarb.
Yeah, like a power snack.
This interview's turned into a three-way interview that's going way off the rails. So you are incredibly active on Twitter. Obviously, it's got a lot more safe for work. How have you been utilizing it to kind of promote the books?
Really what I've been doing, honestly, is I've been using Twitter mainly to network with other people that write and review. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I feel like nobody looks at my tweets. Like, I'm actually stunned that you've seen that. So, like, I used it to network because the writing community is so strong on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? And so I've met a couple dope authors off of there. And really, I want to say the best part of Twitter, what it does is the writers list.
Okay.
Right. And when people do writers lists, it gives me an opportunity to kind of, because as a managing editor of the imprint, it's my job to kind of scout talent, you know what I mean? And so I kind of get to look through at who's got dope stuff out, you know what I'm saying? And I also get to kind of promote my own work. And what happens is other people see it and they're like, hey, you know, this is kind of cool. And I'm like, hey, well, what do you write? You know what I'm saying? And so it kind of helps me build this network of people to where it's like, you know, everybody, it's not like rap music, right? Writing shouldn't be competitive like that.
Right. And it shouldn't. It's collaborative. Like, we're all in it together. Well, not me, but you.
And now I typically let my wife do most of my posting on Twitter. She's prettier than me, so I feel like it's just a tad bit more effective.
If he want to post something wrong, he send it to me.
And if I want to post something crazy, like, she's my quality control. You know what I'm saying? Like, so Like all of the martial arts videos on Instagram, like she like, no, I don't like that song, or nah, your moves weren't crisp in this video, you need to go back and do it again. And I'm like sweating my balls off in 40 pounds of armor and gambling, and I'm sitting here trying to work it out while not waking up our daughter. You know what I mean? So, but at the end of the day, I'm pleased for it because it's been like, it's one of those things where I think people like those videos more than they like the bookish posts, like, to be real. Like, maybe I should just make that my full-time thing if this writing don't work out.
Oh, I mean, the writing's working out because it's great, but also the videos are great. I think there's a way you could be both. Look at how Christian's
Yeah, like I
developed.
definitely want to get back into it. I gained some weight, so I got to restrap my armor up.
Well, it's
But
not gonna look very good if you're not looking ripped. So let's get on that. We'll
yeah,
talk to your manager. She seems to have
yeah, we got
she
to talk
seems
to
to have a
man.
positive impact on things.
Definitely does.
So, what as your role as a managing editor,
Mhm.
what does that entail? Like, what are you looking for?
Pretty much what I do is I sat down last year and I signed a couple authors that I really believed in, that I really liked, to kind of create a kind of a diverse offering for what we had with our slate, because SFF for the Culture is one of the first or one of the few existing Black owned fantasy presses like in the nation, right? And so it was important to me to find authors that I think were going to represent that, and that had a voice that wasn't necessarily it's like this. I feel like lots of people can write well, you know what I'm saying? But I wanted people that were gonna break new ground, you know what I'm saying? So I went out and got a Zed Amadeo, who happens to be the granddaughter of Jimi Hendrix, right? Which I thought was dope. Yeah, yeah. So that's dope. I'm waiting for her book. I have Deborah Renee Bird, who wrote The Fractured Princess. So we're re-releasing that, and I'm really excited about that because she's such a dope sister. And when I was reading it, I was like, this kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy VII.
Great
Like, because
game.
you know how Seven had that sense of pathos and adventure all kind of intertwined. And so when I talked to her after reading, she's like, yeah, I was kind of playing that and it was kind of inspired. But I was like, yes, this is why we need to re-release this book. And I'm really excited. That comes out next month. In August, I want to say on the 28th. So that's really dope. And then I got Kevin Macklin, who is actually, I didn't pick Kevin. My wife was like, hey, listen, I think that you need to sign this guy, right? And so she sent me
I can hear her
his
in the
work,
background. She tried to take
and
that.
I was like, yo, you know what? This is dope. I was like, because I'm reading his book, and I was like, yeah, this reminds me of like John Wick, but just in the hood. And I was like, yo, this is great. Like, I love this. And it was dope. Like, it was just so well written. Like, when it came through, because I sent everybody, like, that's the process. Like, I look at your manuscript, right? And I say, all right, I like this. Now go back and fix these things because it's not perfect and it could always be better. And then, like, that's the main part of the job, right? Is you got to keep everybody encouraged, and you got to keep everybody in a sense where they want to do their best work. As a writer, you kind of get caught up in this mindset where it's like, this is my baby. This is my baby. So nobody can
Right.
criticize it. It's perfect. And it's like breaking that down is one of those things where it's like, hey, listen, it's not about just writing the book you wanted to write, right? Because that's important, right? It's about making it the best work you can make it. So a lot of that is that, you know what I'm saying? When you're the managing editor, you're kind of responsible for projects from start to finish till they go out for not necessarily developmental edits, which is what they do to catch, like, all right, hey, listen, you need to change sentence structure and
Yeah,
stuff
like
like
plot
that.
holes and
But
stuff.
the
Yeah.
final editing process, you know what I'm saying? Like, from work in progress phase to, so if you were one of my writers, Mike, and you call me at 2:30 in the morning, like, Chase, my characters are taking on a life of their own. I don't know what to do. Why are they doing this? Like, I'm 40,000 words behind on my word count. Like, it's my job to help you get through that.
Yeah, you know what you would say is no thanks, I'm fucking done with you, Mike. You suck.
Nah, never that. Because when I started writing, I was in a bubble. I was doing it by myself. Like, none of my friends wrote. I didn't have any writer friends. Like, I did my homework, but I didn't realize how much, like, when you start rapping, like, I just went about it the same way. It's like, I got bars, I'm dope. You just start spitting, people listen. I didn't know you needed kind of a tribe with you when you go into this, right? And so like I struggled. I'd be sitting there waking up in the middle of the night with plot problems, and I ain't had nobody to talk to. Like you know what I mean? So it's honestly my pleasure because I just wish that somebody could have developed me,
I went to class.
right?
Well, now you
And
got time.
yeah. And my wife went to school actually to be an editor, so now I can bother her before I bother other people. So it's pretty dope.
I mean, great to keep it all in the family. I think what you're doing and elevating diverse voices is an exciting thing and a necessary thing. So I'm really curious and excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. Because it's one of those things where my son is 9, right, and he's a weeb. You know what I'm saying? Like he loves
Yep.
anime and stuff like that. And like we didn't even have a name for it when we was that age, Mike. Did we? Nah, we couldn't tell our
Nope.
friends that we was going home to watch Dragon Ball.
Nah, they didn't even know what
No,
that shit was.
right? And so it's like it's one of those things where I like to see that transformation. Like, because I look at people tell me like, "Oh, what do you write?" And they just assume I write like street lit or urban fiction. I'm like, "Oh, nah, I actually write fantasy and sci-fi." And they go, "Well, you know, you're
Yeah.
a sci-fi fantasy writer." And so I just want to kind of make that no longer a thing. You know what I'm saying? Because it's our philosophy that everything that comes out of science fiction and fantasy eventually makes its way to our reality. Look at what we're doing right now. Right? This was somebody's idea in a book or a TV show. Remember the Morpher watches where Zordon used to pop up on Power Rangers and you could see him and talk to him? Right? We never thought that would be real life stuff. Yet right now, right here, we are having a conversation from miles and miles away, looking right at each other in real time. And so that's the value and the importance of science fiction and fantasy is it impacts our reality. And so that's why it was like definitely a thing to want to bring more diversity into it, because if you ask people like, oh, name 5 black sci-fi writers or fantasy writers, people look at you like, what? Octavia Butler, and then they can't name anybody else. So it's really my mission just to change that and to, just make it a thing to where one day there's no division, right? You know what I'm saying? You could pick up a book and it's not a surprise to get a little diversity in who's writing the books. And so that's my thing. We call it being a siege engine against the gatekeepers.
I was just about to say, it sounds like you are going to be gatekeeper's worst nightmare,
That's the plan.
and I'm fucking excited to see what you're gonna do with that. I think
Thank
I'm
you.
ready to start shooting out some book questions. How you feeling?
Awesome. I'm ready.
Would you say that Dr. Pandora Epstein opened Pandora's box?
She most certainly did. And it was one of those things where it's like, yo, did I overdo it with the name? And I was like, nah, B, nah. You gotta do it like that. Like, yeah, and I definitely did drive my wife nuts with it. Because when I first wrote it, that wasn't an original part of the book, right? I finished the book and then I went back and wrote that prologue. You know what I'm saying? To kind of tie everything together. So it was like she definitely opened Pandora's box, which I feel like scientists need to be watched carefully, right? That's just
Okay.
like I was a machinist, right? So I spent a lot of time working with engineers, right? My best friend's an engineer, right? And he needs to be supervised constantly, lest he does something to fuck up the rest of us. And so, like, I feel like that whole concept of Pandora Epstein and what she did was kind of my way of speaking to society, like, hey, science is great. Let's start paying attention to what we do with this shit before we fuck something up, which, as you know, happened. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Did you know, Dr. Epstein died with the password. Did anyone think about clicking forget my password to try to get it back?
like it will turn out right, and nobody gets to see this yet until book 4, which will be coming out soon, right?
Shout out to that.
Exactly why it was set up the way it was, right? Because the Annie Cabal was never really like, when you read it, like the government service was never something Pandora saw herself being in.
Right.
Right. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those things where, like, you can ask yourself, you can make the argument, did Pandora open Pandora's box or did the Pentagon open Pandora's box?
Oh, now we're talking. Now we're getting deep.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's like she knew what she was doing all along, right? And she went and found like-minded people that would be with her mission, right? As soon as she got into school and started designing this. So it's like I personally think, right, in real life, the government should have known better. Like, hey, what are the fail safes? How do we turn this off? What happens if you or the president aren't available? Like Chase will ask these questions because I'm just a natural skeptic, and I've been a victim of keeping it real goes wrong and Murphy's Law all at the same time. So I learned to ask questions like this, but unfortunately, I think I'm in the minority in that.
But yeah, I mean, I can't even remember the password to get into this podcast. I just have it saved. So while other sixth graders were finding porn online, I was reading the Anarchist Cookbook. That's not believable. I think you had time to multitask.
Yeah. I'll put it like this. Cassette is very much so based on me, right? They tell you write what you know. And so for my very first foray into it, I just figured I'd pick what I knew best. And in sixth grade, I ain't gotta say I wasn't into girls. I was definitely into girls, but I was into like real life girls. Like if I could not touch them, then there was no point. Like internet girls didn't probably have a purpose till freshman year of college. Like,
Yeah, all right. I just think you probably could have did both. There's a lot of time in the day as a sixth grader.
Yeah, I should have. But,
Now, how do you say his name again, the main character?
His name is Kasei.
Kasei, okay. Because I wanted to read it as Chesed, and that is not how you say it. I knew that was wrong. Was the most relatable thing when Kasei became king was he immediately had a threesome?
I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like when you get crowned king, those things should probably just be a normal part of life. Nah, let me stop. But it was one of those things where it was like I was writing, and I like to surprise people. You know what I'm saying? Like I like to.
No, I did that.
Yeah, my wife is maybe partially responsible for that. Like that might have to be a whole separate podcast, though.
That's Swords and Sports After Dark.
But real talk is one of those things where it's like a lot of things that I notice in books, like especially fantasy books, right? To look at a lot of the great characters, right? Uhtred of Bevan, what do we call that show? The Last Kingdom and all of the great Bernard Cornwell books, right? Uhtred had terrible luck with women. As a matter of fact, all of the heroes typically have terrible luck with women. And so I wanted to do something different. I was like, yo, why can't we have a main character that doesn't have terrible luck with women? Like, to me, that's depressing. It's like, yo, man, you feed the ravens, you don't starve no crows, like everybody afraid of you, and you can't even have no wife. Like, that's booty. Like, that ain't even right. So it's like, I definitely wanted to switch it up and to kind of step outside that cookie cutter mold. You know what I'm saying? Because Cassette is a very different kind of character than to what you find in most books like this. And so why shouldn't his love life have a little bit more flavor than we're used to seeing?
Shit, I mean, Post Malone gets laid, so why not Cassette?
Exactly.
Operation Woo is named after Shadow Throne. Do you think he would have approved of the plan? Because he was more of an imperialist.
Yeah, like this is what I'll say. Right, I feel like before I started reading the Rise of the Empire series, right, where they started bringing in the books from Kellen Vet and Dancer's perspective, right, I feel like the old emperor from Gardens of the Moon might have been like, hey, fuck this kid, man. Right. But once I started reading it, and especially like with how he kind of low-key besieged Li Hang from the inside out without actually, overtly doing it, I was like, nah. Wu would have definitely been on my side. He probably would have been upset and disappointed that there was not more mayhem involved. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like
more mayhem.
More mayhem. Well, because I mean, like when you think about that character, right? This dude really reshuffled the world on as part of a magical experiment. Like, he didn't even want to be the emperor. He wanted to figure out what the hell was going on with the Shadow Realm. Like, so all of that, the whole Malazan Empire, the Nappings, the whole Seven Cities Crusade campaign was all so he could be Indiana Jones, find some shit, and sit the Shadow Throne. He didn't even want the throne of the Malazan.
Yeah, it was like a side project.
Exactly, which I think is epically dope and just the biggest dick move you could ever make. You know what I'm saying? I used to always wonder. They used to say, "Oh, well, the old emperor never really cared about these things. This is why you let Urko crushed and Carteron crushed and Surly run the empire, right? And I was like, that don't make no damn sense. He did all this shit. But then once I got to read like Dancer's Lament and all of that, I was like, yeah, nah, now it makes sense. Which shout to
Man.
Steven Erickson, because that was really unique. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that temporal power wasn't the end, it was the mean, where usually it's always the other way around. You find the magical object so you could be the king or the emperor. Not you
Yeah.
become king or emperor so you could get the magical object. Like that was pretty dope.
Shout out to him. We're deep in the weeds now.
Yeah.
As the king, do you think Cassette could get a like a verse? He's a rapper, so do you think he could get a verse from like Kanye or at least like a chorus from Playboy Cardi or some shit?
You know, it's one of those things where I've been debating on whether or not, right, looking at it, because now, you know, time has progressed in the books, right? And so I've been trying to think, because world building is important, right? And so now
Of
that
course.
we move out of the initial chaos of book 1 and 2, right? And then once you get to the third book, you're gonna probably hit me up like, Chase, what the hell is wrong with you?
I
But
will.
yeah, real talk is one of those things where I don't know what to do about the other rappers, right? So in real life, King Cassad probably could get a verse, right? But I don't know if I can actually write about other rappers without cutting people checks. So, you know,
That's
ain't
a good
nobody trying
point.
to do that. But what I definitely think I might do is, and I've been kicking this idea around since I started writing the first book, is I want to just put guys on. Like, so I've been telling everybody, like, yo, write me a Vanguard inspired track, right? Write
Why
me a book
not?
like inspired, or write me a verse or a song inspired by the series, and I will make sure it gets put on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because stuff like this, like the music is an important part of the books, and it's one of those things where like every couple scenes, like music is setting the mood for what's going on, like, and all of that. So it's one of those things where it's like, why shouldn't we have a soundtrack? You know what I'm saying? And I'm kind of sad that I don't have the same capacity no more, because I would have just wrote it my damn self.
I don't know. Yeah, I think that'd be a fun project. King
So
Cassette
if you got some
does.
bars, Mike, let me know.
Fuck no. King Cassette does a Cartman impression. How's yours?
Ma'am, tell the guys to leave me alone. Like, it's been so long since I watched South Park, right? And really, I got away from it because I didn't want my son watching South Park,
Fair.
right? Because these kids, school ain't like it was for them, for us. You know what I'm saying? These kids will get expelled trying to act out a scene from South Park now. Like, you know what I'm saying? But yeah. So, but yeah, nah, that was like, I religiously watch Cartman and all of that. And that, like, all of the characters are based off of my homies, right? Like, just about everybody out of Cassette's inner circle is based off of a real life person, whether they're here or they're sadly departed. Because I lost a lot of friends, and I just wanted a way to kind of weave people in so that they live on forever in somebody's imagination, even though they're not here no more. And so it's one of those things where that's our thing. Like the Cartman, like, shut up, Kyle. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've been doing that
That was
since
good.
since like 7th grade. You know what I'm saying? And so that was one of those things where it's like an Easter egg for people that know me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you've been around and you know Chase, and like you hung out with our friends group or adjacent to our friends group, then you definitely know that the South Park references and impersonations are definitely a part of the normal smack talking.
All right. You got a pretty good impression. So occasionally we get reports, including the two chapters, from what's going on in the bigger picture of the world. And,
Mhm.
everybody's basically trying to like consolidate power. There's war and strife all over. Is there any part of the world where the people have just kind of like given up and formed some weird cult? Like, is San Francisco just everybody's like a furry?
You know, wait wait till the Juneteenth campaign, right?
Okay.
Because as you know, the first book comes mainly from Cassette's perspective, right? So the first 2 books are like that. In the world we make, right, I start opening up the perspectives so that you get to see things from different people's eyes. You know what I'm saying? And so when I tell you the American weirdness is coming, right? Like, I watched Tiger King, right? And then I went back to the drawing board. I'm like, no, America is definitely not weird enough. You got to go back. You got to make it more weird because people are fucking crazy. It's not going to be believable if you don't make it more weird. So it's definitely coming.
I mean, that's one of those shows where you're like, I didn't think of this. People were this fucking weird.
I thought I had gone too far. I ain't even going to hold you, right? I thought I had gone too far. And then I watched Tiger King, right? And then we had the Capitol riots. I'm like, no, as a matter of fact, I didn't go too far and I fucking predicted this shit.
You didn't go far enough.
Hey, that's what I say.
You definitely got a chance to redeem yourself. Did Cassette ever think my kingdom's safe because people would rather live in New York?
You know what? Nah, because in the books, New York was just an epic shit show. And then COVID taught me that whenever things go shitty in New York, they all come here to Connecticut. Bro, stay on your side of the fucking border. You have Dutchess County and all of that shit up there next to Canada to go invade before you come up here in your own state. And I'm saying it now. Stop making the fucking rent high in Connecticut. But like, it's definitely one of those things where it was like, my friend wrote me, right? And he was like, dude, he said, you jinxed us. And I go, what do you mean? I ain't write this COVID shit in existence. There was no virus in the books. He was like, nah, it's not what I'm talking about. He was like, yo, have you looked at the news lately with all the New Yorkers moving up here and there's this great housing boom? He was like, you called it. You definitely called it. He's like, yo, the minute shit went left in New York, they all moved here. And I was just like, oh, man. Like, so.
Well,
and then go ahead.
Let's hope you didn't call everything because things get pretty fucking grisly.
Yeah, things get kind of sketchy, bro. And like for a person like me who's into the swords and has armor and arsenal, I'm straight. The rest of y'all might be jacked up, you know what I'm saying? If we all go back to medieval weapons, but I have a house full of weapons, so I'll be okay.
Yeah, and I'll be dead in 10 minutes. Did Cassette really think
you're good?
I need to get up there. I need to talk to you and Christian Cameron. Did Cassette really think a game of Never Have I Ever wouldn't turn sexual? What a game of Never Have I Ever has never gone sexual?
You know what, dude? Right. And it's one of those things where I've actually played Never Have I Ever with my mother-in-law before, and it actually did. And I was just like, you know what? And it's one of those things where when you're trying to get a drinking game that you want everybody drunk fast, what's your go-to? It's Never Have I Ever. Because usually, like, you know, people are deviants and you'll end up drunk. Right. And so that was the plan. Right. It just went left. It just went so totally left. And that's just like, you know, you say write what you know. That's just real life experience. Every time I've ever tried to use Never Have I Ever to get other people drunk so I can peacefully extricate myself, it's never ended well. Like I've lost shoes in random places.
They can't drink with me.
Like, yeah, and I can't drink with my wife no more. Like, I don't know what happened. But
you know, I don't know. We'll save that for another day. So we talk about Edward Plantagenet, which I feel like is a real person. He's now the King of England, but Queen Elizabeth is immortal. So what happens to her?
Well, and see, it's one of those things, right, where I really had to decide what I do because I actually liked the Queen when I was a little boy. I used to tell my mother I was going to marry the Queen so I could be King of England.
Good
not
plan.
knowing that she had a whole husband, but we never seen him on TV and shit.
Well, so he's not the king.
Right? And so, Mike, can we pause for 1 second? I got sauce on the stove. There's nobody around to stir.
Oh my God, that's gonna get all fucked. Absolutely, go ahead.
Hold on a second. It's in my wallet.
You know what? We could turn this into a cooking show. Chase is going to make sauce. It's a tomato sauce with a little bit of garlic powder. He chopped some onions. He's got it on low, 200 degrees.
All right. But yeah, now my bolognese didn't stick, so I'm very pleased.
You know what? I might just keep that all in because it was fun. That might be the first ever sauce break in the middle of a podcast. I love it. We're breaking ground over here.
You know, you can't burn the sauce, bro. It's a cardinal sin.
No, that's a cardinal sin. I grew up in an Italian household. That'll get you beat. I like to pitch novella ideas, and I've got one for you.
Perfect.
All right. So Queen Elizabeth, deposed Queen Elizabeth, now for the first time in her life needs to learn how to use social media to get support back. So it's kind of like a touching tale of her trying to learn how to utilize social media and her celebrity to get support back on her side.
Yeah, that would be a great fucking book, bro. Like, I think that really would, because not for nothing. Have you ever tried teaching anybody over 50 how to use the internet?
Yeah, my mom still can't FaceTime.
So it's like, yo, not for nothing. And now try to now make that the Queen of England. And it's like, no, Your Majesty. No, 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 no. You have to push the green button. Like,
I think there's something there.
yeah, I definitely think there is.
How come you don't write?
Do you write, Mike?
Hell no. I just talk to more talented people.
Hey, never say never, brother, because I used to always say the same thing. Now I'm working on my 7th book.
Crazy. Do you think Cassette, what do you think Cassette does more of? Killing people or making speeches? He's a big speech guy.
You know, I have to say that he definitely does more speechifying, right? Because, like, you know, it's one of those things where that was a page out of the Fred Hampton playbook, right? You know what I'm saying? Because, like, that's really what, you know, leadership is a funny thing. You know what I'm saying? And it had to be one of those things where it's like, yo, certain shit like from the stand never made sense to me. Like how everybody gained so much power and, you know, clickism so fast, right? Without any inspirational process, right? You know what I'm saying? It was just like 1 minute you wake up and the bad guys are just Legion, right? And he's got all of these people when they're chilling and it's the Carter at the end of the world. Like, nah, how'd you do that, bro? And so it was one of those things where I really wanted Cassette to be inspiring hearts and minds, but me not telling you like, hey, Cassette inspired hearts and minds. So I let everybody hear the speech. And if you're not ready to get up and make your life or your world a better place after reading the books, then I ain't writing well enough. And I gotta go back to the drawing board. Like, but that was a main thing. That was a main inspiration. It's just like, you know, whenever anybody writes a book, they have something to say, right? Some of the stuff is super duper coded, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you gotta kind of be a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist to know what the hell I'm talking about, right? And other stuff, I very much so wanted to be direct in the message. You know what I'm saying? And it's just stuff about personal responsibility in making your surroundings and your world better. Everybody wants a better life, right? Everybody, we all want a better life. You know what I'm saying? And my grandmother used to say, everybody want to be David, or everybody wants to live in the promised land, but nobody wants to be David.
Ooh.
Right? Because David had to go out there and fight Goliath. Dolo. It was all army chilling behind the box, right? David had to go out there dolo. And like I said, so it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I want everybody to discover their inner King David, where they're ready to go out and fight the giants so that they can get to the promised land. Because when we all take on that kind of attitude, then the world gets better. You know what I'm saying? One community
Absolutely.
at a time. And so that was the plan. So, you know. The killing's fun, but the speeches are important, damn it.
I agree, but I'm gonna be honest. If I saw Goliath, I would have been like, "No, I'm good."
I might have pushed the rock on his head. I don't know about going toe to toe. Give me a real long spear, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, give me something with some range, man. One of the goals of this podcast is to break the traditional stereotypical view of fantasy, that it's this kind of hero slays the bad guy, saves the helpless princess. It's read by like, neckbeards in their mom's basement. What about your books breaks this traditional mold and brings fantasy to a general audience, or hits an area of topics that isn't typically explored?
I think what sets the Road to Resistance apart is the fact that Cassette's not your typical fantasy character, right? And he's not even like a character typically that you find in a street lit book, right? Because here you got this guy that was a drug dealer and a gang member and all of that, but he's got this immense classical education, right? And he spent all of these years really being taught to think like a leader. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Not somebody from his background. So I think Cassette's unique personal dichotomy where he's kind of like Huey and Riley from the
Right.
Boondocks at the same time, right? I think that sets him apart, right? He doesn't have girl trouble. Like I said, there's one thing I really made sure I wanted to fix in the books, because usually your heroes, they either rescue the girl and get the girl, right? Or like I said, you could be like Uhtred and lose 3 wives a book, right? Or like, you know what I'm saying? Then you got Cassette, who already has his relationship. You know, he's a father already, like when the book starts. And so it's one of those things where he's an everyman, but not the standard everyman. right? You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's not that same farm boys, the forgotten king, you know what I'm saying, of a lost bloodline. Like, nah, this dude was just in the hood working and was rather pleased that he didn't have to work because the world seemed to be ending, and just was ready to get loose. And so I think that that's the first thing, is Cassette is not your standard fantasy character. I want us to write somebody that people like me, you know what I'm saying, or from where I'm from, could identify with. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody writes books about blurs, right? And I am a self-professed first, I ain't gonna say first generation, I say maybe second or third generation blur, right? Because my brothers and them were definitely out there playing like Pong and stuff in the 70s, right? You know what I'm saying? And Conan and all of that. So, like, but it's one of those things where nobody write books about blurs, right? And so I wanted a book with a blurred hero. Like, we ain't had one of those. And so that's what I wanted to give the world.
And you nailed it.
Thank you.
On the other end of my serious question always comes my not serious question. This is the #1 podcast for dick jokes and fantasy books, and you've got a lot of funny ones in here. So can I read out some of my? Can I read out some of my favorite?
Definitely, go for it.
It's all fun and games till you sit in there mad with your dick in your hand, and the box locked by another box.
Yeah, like that one there, boy. That's wisdom too.
Yeah, that is wisdom. You've got I had a question following this. I ran at another enemy who had been watching me with the same intensity of a man watching his wife hold a knife to his dick. What does that look?
That is the look like, okay, right before they put you to sleep and you get surgery, how the doctor kind of looks at you like, I got your whole life in my hands right now. Absolutely nothing you can do about it. So you're going to breathe real deep and do what I say. That kind of look. You know what I'm saying? Because, they always smile at you very suspiciously. Like, yo, am I going to enjoy what you do to me once I'm sleeping? Bro, don't do this. What the fuck you doing?
Y'all are just dickmatized. I'm actually very ugly.
My wife just had teeth pulled. Now she's in pain. She's laughing so hard. Oh man. I'm big for the self-depreciating humor, right? And I'm quick to tell people I am ugly, unless you talk about my brothers, and then I am definitely better looking than them. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just ugly enough that I'm better looking than my friends.
But yeah, that was I remember that, like, because not for nothing. It's one of those things where like, there's a lot of in fantasy books, right? You either get the guy who's a total bumbler with women, right? He has no clue what he's doing, right? Or he's too tough for bros, right? Like, he get a girlfriend, but he don't even know what to do with it because he's so hard. Or, he's just the consummate ladies man, which is cool to read too. But there's got to be a middle ground. Like, most of us as men don't fall into one archetype or the other. Like, there's a range. Like, you're 30% bumbler, 70%, Don Juan, or vice versa. And so that was one of those moments where it was like, yo, Cassette knew he's about to get in trouble.
Hey.
Right? Like, and he wanted to do that. And, but how do you do it without getting yourself in more trouble by being disrespectful? Because, you as a man, you can't always be like, no. Right? You can. And no will mean no. And then you're just a jerk and an asshole. Or you get your sexuality question. That's always my favorite. Like, well, do you like girls? Like, yeah, I like girls. And I like you. Just chill. Pump your brakes. Shit.
Speaking of men that were hard, was beyond aroused and I was harder than the steel of my sword. He's on something.
Yeah. It depends, because this is one thing I've learned, and it's like, you go out there, you spar, you do all of this stuff, right? And there's a thin line between fucking and fighting, and anybody tell you anything different than lying, right? So it's like, it was one of those things where, I mean, you either gotta be on something, where L-arginine is a godsend, bro. You don't need a little blue pill, just a trip, like some L-arginine. You gotta get your O2 boosters up, man. You'd be surprised, change your life.
Listen, I just keep trying to get a sponsorship from Blue Chew. That's why I included that joke in there.
I hear that.
I'm trying to get paid. I got one last question for you. That kill stealing bastard Trey. Should Cassette have just betrayed him after that?
Nah, Trey is based off of one of my good friends, And it's like I never forget. We went and we got into this gang fight one time, right? Back when you could still do stuff like that, because the early 2000s was a different time, right? And so I never forget. I had set this kid up. I had actually been fighting him for a while, and the Trevor, who Trey is based off of, is really a giant. Like his hands are the size of freaking frying pans. Like, and so then he just walks over there and lays his kid out. Like, I'm fucking fighting him. It was my knockout. And so it's one of those things where it's like, yo, I told him that one of these days I was gonna expose his skullduggery. You know what I'm saying? And then I was like, yo, it might be a punchline, right? It might be a whole fucking verse. It's gonna come one day. I'll never forget. Because there's so much shit talking after that. I'll never forget it for as long as I live. But yeah, so I definitely had to put that one out there. And he is a kill stealing bastard, you know? Like even in Black Ops and shit. Yeah, definitely fucking yeah.
Well, life's not a video game. I guess you can't really betray him in real life.
Nah. I mean, I could, but that ain't my steez. Karma, man. You know what I'm saying?
Karma comes back for you one day.
Yeah, you gotta keep the karma good.
Chase, thank you so much. Please shout out everything you got coming out. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, chase.bolling.author. My books are on Amazon. You can find me at Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Target. Like, you know, we got my stuff a little bit of everywhere. Next up for the Vanguard series is Chronicle the Unbroken. It immediately follows the events of the world we make. And I'm currently writing book 5, the Juneteenth campaign. Like, I'm having such a blast. I'm about 80,000 words in. I'm only about a third of the way done. So this is going to be a long book. And then, like, I got the M Block book out, Rise of the M Block Rangers, and I like it because it's set in the same world as the Vanguard, right? But the characters, these are people that kind of maybe they worked with Cassette during the Night of Rage when everything went down, but then they couldn't march off with the army when it was time to do what they did. And so it's the story of these 3 brothers, and they're trying to get their Vanguard military shine as mercenaries, you know what I'm saying? So I had a good time writing that. So that's on Amazon only. And just stay tuned. Hopefully I'll have a release date for you guys for the next Vanguard book, Chronicle the Unbroken. I'm really excited about it. And who knows, Mike, maybe I could come back and I'll debut on your show. Let everybody know when everything's dropping.
Oh, I love that idea. Thank you so much for taking the time out. This was a blast.
Hey, man, I had a great time. Like, you know, stay in touch, brother. This was a blast. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I like podcasts, and yours is one of my favorite I've ever been on, dude. Thank you so much for having me.
I don't know if I sold the excitement in the intro to that, but if you just finished the interview, I know what everybody's thinking. That was fucking wild. And honestly, it was a fantastic time. But, moving on, we gotta get to Books on the Horizon. Next week is gonna be City of Lies by Sam Hawke. And the week after that's going to be The Coward by Stephen Arion. That's super exciting. Get ready for it. Keep on reading or something. Peace.